Hey guys, it's Mr. Lili Bubba. I'm here with another Pokemon Showdown match. This is another OU match, and I would like to say this is probably the last 5th gen competitive battle that I am going to do, because there are only a couple months left until 6th gen, and the 5th gen metagame has all kind of set itself. It's gotten a little stale, and, you know, everything's kind of old and been figured out, so it's time to just sit around and wait the next couple months for Gen 6. So let's go ahead and get into this battle. And for some reason, I am on the opposite side of the replay, but it shouldn't take away from the viewing experience too much. My opponent leads with a Politoed, as I lead with this Tentacruel. Now, this Tentacruel is a very weird set. I'm actually running Knockoff on it. And that may sound very weird and kind of a bad play, but it actually is a very good set for my opponent's particular team, because he is very stally and defensive. Obviously, this is an obvious rain stall team, and this is very nice because Knockoff is going to basically get rid of all their regens. So I knock the leftovers off of Parasect, knowing that he's going to Spore me, but I knew that if anyone was going to get sleep foddered, it would be Tentacruel, because he has so many rain-oriented Pokemon. I mean, Water Absorb, his Jellicent could have been running it. I don't believe it is. But the fact that it could have been would have made 3 Pokemon completely immune to Water-type moves. So he actually goes for the Leech Seed here, which I didn't expect. Well, I don't know, because I could have switched into my Celebi very easily, but I know he figured I wouldn't have, because I would have been OHKO'd by that. But the good play here on my part is switching into the Celebi, knowing that he'd probably want to switch out on the Gliscor, because I could have basically completely walled him. But still, that switch makes little sense to me, because you know, he had the Leech Seed on me, so he really could have gotten rid of my stall. But he switches back into his Parasect, which I kind of predicted, but I kind of just wanted to get my rocks up, knowing Politoed couldn't do much to me. But I had an inclination in the back of my mind that that he would switch out into his Parasect, back into it, you know. But I bring in my Scizor, and surprisingly, he doesn't switch out on the Scizor, and he loses his Parasect, which I figured is one of his more offensive Pokemon. But it is kind of support, of course, having Spore, but it does have X-Scissor. And, you know, looking at the rest of his team, he just doesn't have much offense, except maybe, I'm sorry, Jolteon and Toxicroak. He goes for the Will-O-Wisp here, trying to get my Scizor burned, which I predicted, and go out into the Heatran. Of course, that had nothing to do with type advantage. So I bring back in my Tentacruel. I could have just gone out into my Celebi and Heal Belled off this Sleep, but this Jellicent can't really do anything to this Tentacruel. And I figured that I would knock off and actually Giga Drain until I found out what his ability was, whether he was running Cursed Body or Water Absorb. So this Tentacruel was very good in this match, because it allowed me to really scout a lot of things out, because with his team not being very offensive, I wouldn't take very much damage. So I go for the knock off his leftovers, which gives him no regen outside of Recover, which is very nice. And I am able to now figure out that he doesn't have Water Absorb, so I can Scald until I get a Burn, which is very nice, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. I believe he is going to switch out after a few turns of this basically going on the way it is. I can't quite remember if he switches out or if I get a Spadef drop and I switch out, because I don't have really mass HP recovery. I just have the Black Sludge. I could run Rain Dish, but I am running Clear Body on this Tentacruel set. Again, it's a very weird set. I was trying to experiment, trying to do something new, you know, because right now, 5th gen, you know, every Pokemon seems to be running the same set. But lucky for me, I go for the Giga Drain to kind of get some HP back, but he does switch into his Toxicroak, but it didn't really matter. Either way, I wasn't going to do very much, and I figure I'm going to take Giga Drain off of that Tentacruel set, because it's just not... It's not really working out. So I go out into my Celebi. He sees this as a good opportunity to sub, because he knows that I can't really do much to him, so I'd either switch out or keep trying for some reason, and I wouldn't be able to break his sub in one hit. So I go for the Psychic, as he goes for, I believe, the Ice Punch. I thought he was going to try to bulk up or something, but he doesn't, and that Ice Punch doesn't really do as much as I'm presuming he wanted it to, because he does switch out here knowing that he would get completely wrecked by Psychic, plus I outspeed, so he wouldn't be able to get behind the sub first. So he brings in his Jellicent, as I go for another Psychic, knowing that basically anything that came in wouldn't really want to take a Psychic, because I could possibly get a Spadef drop on Politoed or Jellicent. And I do actually on this turn, it's a little ironic that I said that right there, get a special defense drop on the Jellicent as he goes for Recover, so that reveals to me that that is his alternate mode of health regen. So I'm just going to try to fish for some other Spadef drops, but I do get disabled because of Cursed Body, which kind of sucks, so I'm kind of forced to switch out here. I believe I go back out into my Tentacruel, which I can't stress enough how useful this thing was in this battle, because it's just, it gets so stally. Actually, I did misclick here and switch into Terrakion, didn't mean to do that. And I switched right back out into my Tentacruel because there's really nothing that I could try to make do with my Terrakion, since its only attacking moves are Close Combat and Earthquake. I'm not running a Rock-type move on it. So he goes for the burn here, probably knowing that my Terrakion was a physical sweeper, which is almost obvious, though I am kind of a little bit bulky. That is a sub-Swords Dance Terrakion, so I go for the Giga Drain, which just isn't doing as much as I want it to, but without health regen, outside of Recover, of course, it is pretty nice, because it does do about a fourth, but again, he can just regen that right back with Recover, but he actually switches out here, since that stall battle is kind of a losing one here, and he gets me with this right here. He switches into the Jolteon, obviously to scare me out with Thunderbolt, which is exactly what he does, because I do not want to lose my Tentacruel. It's actually proving very helpful in this battle, so I do switch out into my Gliscor to take the Thunder, and he gets me here, goes for the Substitute. The only problem is he doesn't really do much with it. He just kind of uses it for a safe switch, which honestly he could have done, you know, by switching into anything else on my Switch. But I don't know, because I am just going to go for the Earthquake here. I wonder if he didn't predict the Gliscor? I don't know. Why wouldn't you? I mean, if you're scaring me out with Thunder, why wouldn't you predict the Gliscor? But anyway, I believe he goes for the Perish Song as I go for the sub, which kind of sucks, because I didn't know he was a Perish Song set, but those have basically become very, very standard. You know, Specs and Perish Song as opposed to just regular Stall or special defense, but of course the Drizzle is kind of what made this Politoed what it is in the metagame. So I go for the Toxic here as he protects, and I go ahead and switch out, and he switches out as well, I'm assuming fearing not getting off the double protect and getting his Politoed Toxic. But I bring in my Terrakion, thinking that he'd try to double protect, and that would allow me to get behind a sub. But he goes out into his Tentacruel, and I should have been a lot more patient in this battle in general, especially in the next few turns, because I'm going to try to get behind a sub, and he's going to Hydro Pump. And he does hit, and what I could have done is really just stalled him out. Not stalled him out, but tried to wait until he missed a Hydro Pump, which ironically, he does the very next turn, so if I would have just been a little bit more patient as opposed to switching out to my Celebi, I would have been able to get my Terrakion behind a sub and get a Swords Dance or two up, and I would have been able to do a lot of damage to his team, but unfortunately with his Jellicent still in play, I suppose that it would have really been a fruitless effort. So I switch out into Celebi and use Heal Bell to get that burn off of my Tentacruel, and he's got the Acid Spray on his Tentacruel. So I am going to be basically forced to switch out now that I'm at minus 2. Yeah, I'm at -2 special defense. So I am going to go out into my own Tentacruel, and he gets up Toxic Spikes, which isn't that much of a problem for me because that doesn't affect Gliscor, Tentacruel, or Heatran, and I've got Celebi. No, and it also doesn't affect Scizor, and I've got Celebi to Heal Bell it off of either itself or Terrakion, so he goes for the Rapid Spin, gets my rocks out of there. I could have gotten those back up, but his Tentacruel actually stays in for a while. Not stays in, as in stays in battle, but stays in as in stays alive for quite some time. But I am able to knock off and get the regen off of its Tentacruel, which is very nice, and I go for the Scald here, and he predicts that very nicely. Goes out into Toxicroak, or maybe he just predicted a Giga Drain or something, but either way, it's a very nice switch. But I knock off his Black Sludge, so he is losing some of his regen. But he gets a Bulk Up off here. And I believe I go into... what do I go into here? I can't quite remember. It might be Gliscor, but I think I feared the Ice Punch. No, it's Heatran. I thought the Earth Power would kill. I thought that, didn't calc it. Maybe I should have. Maybe would have been smart. But he lives with about 14%, and OHKOs me with Drain Punch, which kind of sucks, because that Heatran, I don't know. Seeing as this was a rain battle the whole time, maybe it wouldn't have been as helpful, because it is kind of a Scarf Lava Plumer. So, you know, except for Parasect, there isn't really much use that it would have had in this battle. But I go into Celebi, and since I outspeed, it's going to be very nice, because I'm able to OHKO him with Psychic. I wonder if he didn't know that I would outspeed. I'm not quite sure, but he goes out into his Jellicent here, as I believe I just... no, I go for the Heal Bell first of all, to get the status condition off of myself. I believe Celebi's the only one that is afflicted by one. So I go ahead and go for the Psychic, trying to get the burn on this Jellicent, seeing as it's obviously trying to stall me out with that Acid Armor shenanigans. But unfortunately, I believe the first time I use it, I do get disabled. No, the first time I use it, I get the Spadef drop, and I think the second time I use it, I get disabled. So I'm going to be forced to switch back into my Tentacruel. And just so you guys know, if you haven't noticed already, this battle is very, very stally. So if, you know, if it gets a little boring to watch anyway, sorry, because I mean, it's just a very stally battle in general. This Jellicent is just staying alive with recovery, even having no regen. And I finally get disabled, actually. It takes a good couple times of using Psychic for it to finally get disabled. But he does get disabled here. So I go ahead and switch out into my Tentacruel, which is going to absorb the Toxic Spikes and basically be a full counter to this Jellicent. He can't really do much to me whatsoever. And I am just going to sit here and fish for the burn with the Scald that I think I get here. Yeah, I finally get the burn that I wanted on this Jellicent, which is very nice. And he gets a burn as well. He gets the Will-O-Wisp off, but again, still having Celebi alive, that burn is really not going to affect me in the slightest. So I switch back out, now that this thing's got some residual damage on it, into Celebi, and I can basically just wall this thing out and kind of force it to waste all of its recovers or switch out or something. But this Jellicent is basically doomed now that it's got no regen and no way to get off status conditions. Actually, I think no one on his team has any way to get rid of status conditions. So, you know, if you're gonna run a very stally team, you gotta have some support, because stall can be very, you know, screwed up by residual damage and status conditions in general. So I go for the Heal Bell to get that burn off of my Tentacruel since I'm disabled on Psychic, and now I figure now is the time to get out of that situation with my Celebi, since I am down in special defense, and I've done what I needed to do with the Heal Bell. So I go ahead and bring back in my Tentacruel, as he's going to go for another recover. And at this point, I think he's starting to realize that his Jellicent is kind of dead. I mean, he's not winning the stall war with this Jellicent by any means, even with a disabled Giga Drain. I mean, he'd have to get a good 2 or 3 special defense drops, really, for that Shadow Ball to start doing anything based on my regen. But luckily for him, I do lose my Giga Drain, which would have made it a lot harder for him to try to stall me out with Shadow Ball. He's going to sit here and spam Recover, and he's still losing from the burn, which is nice for me, as I sit here and spam Scald, which isn't doing much, but at -2 special defense, it's doing more than it could, which is pretty nice. And I'm still not losing any special defense from these Shadow Balls, which it's a little unfortunate for him. He's not getting very lucky with those stat drops. And now, even with the Recover, I think I am going to be able to 2-hit KO from here with Scald, unless he switches out, which of course he finally does. But he has nothing else on his team with Dry Skin to take that, so I go for another Scald. Don't get the burn on the Politoed, I believe. But I believe he also makes a really good play here. I finally get my disable to end, which is pretty nice. I go for the knockoff here, actually. It's not until I bring in my Gliscor that he makes the pretty good play, but I go for the knockoff. He goes for the Perish Song, and I believe I switch directly out. And I think he does the same. I can't quite remember. Actually, I think he stays in, and I bring in my Gliscor. No, I bring in my Scizor, actually, and here he gets a crit with Scald. I think it mattered. I think it mattered. I haven't calced it, but that thing isn't Specs, of course. It is a Perish Song set, but it is Rain boosted, so I'm not quite sure if that crit mattered. I'll have to calc it to ever know for sure, but I go out into my Gliscor, and I get behind a sub, which is very nice, and I figured he'd go for Protect, but he doesn't. He just goes for the Scald to try to break my sub, but now he's going to lose his Politoed next turn, and I get my Toxic Orb to activate, which is very nice because now I know I can get my Gliscor behind a sub, which I do, of course. And what's very cool here is this stock Earthquake does a lot of damage. You know, he has no regen, or actually he does. He still has Rain Dish, even without his Black Sludge. So his Tentacruel still does have health regen, even without having his item equipped. So he goes for the Hydro Pump here, and I believe that I go for another sub, or maybe I just go for another E-Quake as he switches out here, which I figured he would do, not wanting to lose his Tentacruel, that being, you know, one of the really only useful Pokemon he has left. But I get a crit. It might have mattered, but it also might not have. I really don't think it mattered because I outsped, so he wouldn't have been able to recover on the next turn anyway, plus the burn damage in between turns. He would have just died anyway. So I go straight for the Toxic, knowing he'd try to Perish Song, which of course he doesn't, but I live with 3%, so my bad prediction didn't really come back to bite me that much, and I could have gone for Protect here and stayed in, but again, I made some really impatient plays throughout this game. I'm actually very, very happy with the results after being so impatient with that, and I don't think he ever gets a burn on my Tentacruel with that Scalding, but now his Politoed's basically doomed now that it's got the Toxic on it. But again, actually losing the Gliscor would have been collateral damage, because I don't think his Jolteon is really going to be able to do much to Celebi, so Celebi could have easily taken care of this Jolteon with a couple of Psychics. Unless he's running a support class, set that is specially defensive, which, does happen. It's pretty rare, but it's possible. So, I believe I go for the Protect here, or I might just straight switch, as he gets me once again with that sub. He has just enough to get behind a sub, and he does go for it. But once again, it's basically just for a free switch, which doesn't mean that much, because his Politoed is kind of doomed, and having Rocks up would have gotten a lot more residual damage later in the game, but his Tentacruel still is in play, and it's a little late game now to send Celebi back in to get those back up, and he goes for the Perish Song on my Tentacruel, and I believe I stay in a few turns before switching out this time. I'm not quite sure though. Yeah, he goes ahead and switches out into his own Tentacruel. I actually stay in and go for the Scald, and that is actually a 3-hit KO because it only does 10%, and he's going to regen back up to 12, which kind of sucks. That's going to force me to switch out, which I do out into, I believe, Celebi. Yeah, I go ahead and go out into Celebi. He goes for the Acid Spray here, probably predicting my Celebi switch, knowing that I wouldn't switch into Gliscor or Terrakion because of obvious rain-boosted, super effective Scald shenanigans, but I go for the Psychic, kill off his Tentacruel, which is pretty nice. And now, I believe he realizes that this is kind of game. I mean, his Politoed's doomed, and his Jolteon's at low enough health that my Gliscor can OHKO with Earthquake, so he goes ahead and forfeits. Oh, no, actually not yet. I go ahead and switch out into my Tentacruel. I think it's next turn or so that he forfeits, since he doesn't get that burn on Tentacruel, and it's basically game from here. So, my opponent's going to go ahead and forfeit. Yeah, he finally forfeits, so, yeah, that's going to go ahead and be the match. Thank you guys for watching. Please remember to leave a like rating and comment down below, and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. Peace out.